Hey guys, welcome to another East Coast Rams podcast. I'm your co-host Ashton here with my awesome co-host Zach. Zach, how you doing? How's the summer going? How are the children here? School's about to start.
Yeah, school already started. So yeah, the kids are already back in school, and we're kind of finishing up kind of our summer activities. And but now it's football season, so it's really starting to ramp up for us here on the podcast. But yeah, everything's going great. How about you?
Yeah, going good. There's a giant storm outside, so that's fun. Hopefully everyone around the DC down to North Carolina area are staying safe and staying dry. So a lot of big weather, but for most part, it's the summer. Enjoying time. Got to watch some preseason football. So football is starting, Zach, and I guess we can roll into that because we got a lot of awesome topics to kind of talk about.
Yeah, but let's start first with the biggest news of the day. This was broken by our own Jake Ellenbogen, and he broke the news this morning that John Johnson III is making his return to the Rams. People caught him at training camp yesterday, kind of talking to the GM and the players and Sean McVay, and there was speculation that probably was kind of just a let's kind of see where we can go with this. And yeah, so Jake broke the news. He got the news last night and then broke it first thing this morning. So awesome for him that he got to do that. But yeah, what do you think of this? Bringing a John Johnson, he was here for 4 seasons. Then he took a 2-year break off and went to Cleveland. Not so much success that he had in Cleveland like he did with the Rams, but I think this kind of brings some sort of veteran presence back to the Rams, which has been kind of limited in this young defense.
Yeah, Zach. So, like you said, a up and down time with the Browns. Now let's remember he's still only 27. He left off the Rams off of the best defense in the NFL, went to the Browns, got his bag. Didn't perform, I think, up to his expectation or standards, especially how he left off the Rams. I really do think he was a top 15 safety in the league that season. And then moving on to the Browns, I didn't get to watch them especially on defense, as much as I would like to fully judge his time there. But his stats did take a slight decline. I don't think it was definitely a terrible safety with the Browns. I do think he was around average. Even if we're not getting prime John Johnson, right? Like 2020 John Johnson. I definitely think this DB room has a lot of lack at depth and especially like veteran depth. I understand a lot of people on the rock with the rookies. And yeah, they're all question marks and they could all turn out to be like 5 out of 5 level players. But like I just don't see how people cannot understand these are question marks and not guarantees on the roster. You got to sign someone that can bring stability to that backfield, be able to make plays. I feel like he is an upgrade from Taylor Rapp. Both me and you have talked a lot about Taylor Rapp in the last year or two. And I feel like we missed a really good zone safety in the back. Now, Jordan Fuller has been really good, but he has problems with health. Now, hopefully, if he can stay healthy and John Johnson can be next to him, I think that could be a relatively good safety pairing. I don't think it's going to be top 10 in the league, but compared to last year, I think when we had like Nick Scott really struggling to cover zone and Taylor could never cover zone in his time here, that really made things hard on our DBs as people just kept on going over the top for 30-yard bombs and or more. And it just you could really see that mixed with the lack of pass rush.
100%. I mean, you kind of look at this back half of, the back end of the defense, and it's young. I mean, it's players that have, they're rookies, 2 year, 3 years uh, into their NFL career, and that's it. Like, you don't have anybody that has the experience, has the NFL experience like a John Johnson does. I mean, they did pick up Witherspoon, I mean, a defensive back. So they did bring in somebody who hopefully also be that kind of veteran presence. But when you bring in John Johnson, you bring in somebody who knows the system. He knows Sean McVay. He knows how the Rams like to function. And that again, anytime you bring back a player, um, even someone who, even if you go back and look at Weddle. Weddle came back in the Super Bowl playoff season having no experience, but just bringing that better experience and bringing that comfort to the defense, I think it's just going to help make this young defense be way better than they were yesterday when he wasn't signed. So I think it's a good move. I think it's something that definitely it's definitely the right move. It's somebody again who brings in that veteran experience, who really wants to wants to shine. It's a 1-year deal, so if it doesn't work out, then it's kind of no foul to either team, since especially in this kind of remodel kind of a system, that if it's a down year, I don't think it's going to hurt either the team or the player himself. So that's just my 2 cents on it. Do you have anything else you want to add to the John Johnson mix?
No, I just think this team is kind of proving with the Witherspoon signing and with this signing, Zach, that they definitely don't want to tank. And I think me and you have always agreed with Sean McVay as our coach, they're never going to purposely lose. I do think if they're in a situation where it doesn't benefit them to play their best players, they won't do it. They proved that last year. But this next year, they made the decision that they're going to try to win with what they got, and they're not going to bet more using stuff from the future. I think they're going to try to win within the context of whatever they have for this season. And it really does change the method that they've been looking at this team. They've been always using future assets, always kicking the can down the road. And I'm interested to see how the season goes with that change of methodology. I think Witherspoon and John Johnson signings are really good for that pivot because they're going to be relatively affordable. I think if Witherspoon stays healthy, he has a lot of health concerns, but his play has been good. Now, again, neither of them going to be top 10 in their respective positions, but they're going to help out the depth. Hopefully, they can help this very young roster mature and learn very advanced techniques, kind of accelerate that learning curve by seeing how a pro does their job. And hopefully, if everyone stays healthy, this defense can kind of surprise and shock people. And before summer, and tell me if you disagree, Zach, before summer, this was looking like it was going to be a bottom 10 defense. Even if we hit on all our draft picks, it's going to take them a few games to get used to the NFL, and we're going to lose games because of that. And I really thought they were going to probably end maybe around 20. So not exactly bottom of the league, but I thought they were going to struggle a lot, especially in the up back end. What do you make of these signings, and do you think does it push the needle for you for the defense overall, these 2 signings?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think it definitely increases the defense's chance of being more successful. Again, just adding that veteran experience, adding that confidence to that backfield, I think it's just going to do, a whirlwind of difference. I mean, you look at, Jordan Fuller, he's the outside of John Johnson and now in Witherspoon, John Johnson has the most experience in the back end. And so with 4 years. So it's one of those things where I think it immensely improves that backfield, just having that again, that veteran presence. So really looking forward to it. John Johnson, just going through his stats just from the last 6 seasons that he's been in the league, 12 career interceptions, 512 total tackles, 41 passes deflected. I think there was only one season where he didn't play most of the year. That was, I think, 2018 or 2019. Yeah, I think that sounds right. So where he only played about 9 games. So other than that, he's had a pretty healthy career over the NFL. So I think this, like you said, it brings a good depth piece. It brings a good veteran piece. Definitely a good move, and the fan base seems to love it. So I think everyone's pretty excited from the fan base
Oh yeah.
about bringing him back on board. But that's not really the only change that's kind of been coming out. There's been a lot of, I think you were mentioning about the methodology of this Rams team, and I think
Yep.
over the last couple of weeks and over the last few days during training camp, we've really seen this change within the Ram organization, starting with training camp. I feel like over the last several years, there really hasn't been so much of a position battle. There's been a couple, trying to vie for the starting roles, but this specifically this season, this training camp, we really have seen like these position battles going back and forth of who's going to be wide receiver 3, who's going to be wide receiver 4, 5, and 6, really, who's going to be center, who's going to be, right tackle, left tackle. I mean, obviously we know who the right tackle is going to be, but left guard, and who's going to play all these positions, who's going to, be the starting DBs and the starting safeties, things like that. There's a lot of positions that are kind of up for grabs other than Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford, and Aaron Donald. Other than those three, and Rob Havenstein is probably included in that as well. Those are the only locks that we have for training camp. So I think you were spot on when the methodology of this team for going into 2024 is going to be completely different than how we kind of seen it for. So going with training camp, what have you kind of seen over the last 2 weeks that really have impressed you?
Yeah, so over the last 2 weeks, I would say the biggest thing that has jumped out to me, Zach, has really been the approach Stafford has taken. Um, I don't know if I would really necessarily say he looks completely healthy. To me, off the jump, it's kind of hard to tell. Probably someone who's been there probably could attest more to that. But the way he's approaching talking to these young wide receivers, I could eat up that eat up all that content for like minutes on end or hours on end, really. I love seeing that stuff, how it works behind the scenes, how he's giving them stance advice. I think he was telling Puka to kind of like stop shuffling and pointing as much as he was. Giving him notes on his routes and stuff like that. Love things like that. I like the leadership from him because he doesn't have to do that. He could just go among his business, Zach, and just throw the ball and just get paid. But going out of his way to help out these young guys, I think really does benefit their growth curve, like we were talking about earlier. I would also say overall, it looks like the defense has been rotating a lot. Not in a good way. From what I can tell, it looks like pass rush is struggling a lot, especially those edge rushers. So that's starting to become a real concern for me. And the secondary, up till the John Johnson signing, and really Witherspoon hasn't really gotten a lot of chance to play because he got his hand hurt. I know he's been in there a little bit more. Uh, but really, it looked like the secondary was getting toasted a lot, for lack of a better term. Uh, I'm still a little concerned about this defense. I do think some of them they're trying to address it, and I think that's the important thing that I'm looking at. And I think the preseason is going to be make it or break it for a lot of these people on the roster bubble and a lot of these undrafted free agents. And wish all these guys best of luck. I want them to ball out. I want them, but they're gonna have to go out and make the plays, Zach. And making it in the NFL is tough. Only 1% of players get to do it, and we'll see. We'll see what we have at the end of the day. But summer camp looks like it's being eventful and a little bit of a scare. And I'll let you go into that next.
Yeah. So, the big scare was Cooper Kupp. He was kind of the biggest fear going into this when he injured his hamstring, hobbled off the field last week. All signs point that he's fine. He's just kind of keeping an eye on it, making sure he doesn't re-injure that. doing his normal rehab, things like that. Obviously, as Rams fans, we rather him just sit out and not really like do what he needs to do and do what he's expected to do. But, he doesn't need to go do drills. He doesn't need to go out and run super, crazy routes during training camp. I think he's proven himself, just like Aaron Donald, just like Matthew Stafford, that, he's capable of running and making the plays without having to have all that extensive training camp procedure. So, everything, all points say that he's going to be fine. He should be back during when they do meet with the other teams and do kind of the practices with other teams. So we should see him back on the field here soon. And then obviously he should be good to go for week 1 against Seattle. So that was the biggest scare. We've had some other weird, interesting injury updates. Van Jefferson has had his 3rd rest day of training camp. So that's kind of concerning when you have wide receiver 2, not participating. They say it's planned, but it just seems too much. It just puts you kind of on that fear that, he's not going to be ready, or his knee is not fully healed enough to be ready against week 1. And like I said, this offense is all hands on deck. And they're really going to have to elevate things a little bit. Other than that, I think there has been some injuries. I think there's been a couple of defenders who also have had some ankle injuries. So kind of see how that thing goes, but everything seems to be pretty minor. No big ones. Obviously Cooper Kupp was kind of the biggest one, and Van Jefferson's just an unknown just because he's had so many rest days. So yeah, that's kind of injury update. I'll give you a little bit of my thoughts. I agree with you. I think the defense has been not as stellar. Obviously we heard from Raheem Morris that he's looking like Kobe Durant. Maybe Sean Jolly will play that kind of Jalen Ramsey star position moving forward. So we got that going for us. As far as the offensive side of things, I've been listening to all of the media avails that have been coming out, reading the transcripts, going through those, and we see a lot of highlights. We see a lot of great passes. But I think there's a lot that we're not seeing. We kind of heard earlier last week, Sean McVay was frustrated when they started having pads on, that they just were not in rhythm. They were making dumb mistakes. They just weren't clicking the way that I think that he was wanting them to do. And so that's kind of concerning. I mean, you're talking about your offensive line, you're talking about your defensive line, you're talking about, these young receivers who you are 100% going to count on going forward. And so I think that's the most concerning thing about it. You saw Stetson Bennett. People love the Stetson Bennett catches and throws. I don't know, the one where Cooper Kupp kind of outreaches and catches it from the end zone. To me, that was a great catch by Cooper Kupp, not a great throw by Stetson Bennett. I think he has the potential, but again, he is still a rookie. Whether he's a 5th year, people think he's older than Matthew Stafford. Whatever you think about like age or veteranism or things like that, he is still a rookie in the NFL, and it's just a totally different beast. So he has a lot to learn. Stafford seems like he's willing to put him under his wing, but you're going to have to start learning. You're going to have to learn quick to really elevate that at that position.
Yeah, Zach, I definitely agree with you. Having a rookie QB, you're gonna have to be patient. The NFL is a completely different speed. I am one of the more bigger proponents, at least on Rams Twitter. For Stetson Bennett, I really do believe in him. Now, it's nice to have Cooper Kupp to catch your bad throws. I think it happens all the time. But, he's going to have to grow. He's going to have to get better. I think his deep ball is going to desperately need a lot of work. His ability to do, I would say, past 3 or 4 reads is going to have to be worked on. And his ability to read NFL coverages, I think that's going to be super important that he's not going to be used to. And I think he has the capability. This guy who went from a walk-on, to two-time national champion. I think he's used to adversity. He's used to having to grow and conquer the next challenge. I do believe he'll be able to do that. Do I think he'll ever be a starter level player? I definitely think he has the capabilities, Zach. It depends on the opportunities and if he takes advantage of them. If you're in that style of being a backup QB, you only get a handful of opportunities ever to show. And if Stafford goes down or he goes in the preseason and gets to start every game, he's gonna have to show out in order to get playing time. You don't just get snaps, you earn them. And we'll see how he does. And I definitely think he's going to do better. Just a quick comment on Van Jefferson. It's definitely concerning that he has a lot of rest days like that back to back. Now, unless if it's something completely personal and he doesn't want to tell people, I completely get that. Um, but again, I'm always skeptical about this team when it comes to injury news. So we'll have to wait and see. And I think if he's not there, he's been up and down, but our other wide receivers are kind of unproven. Like we don't know what we have in Tutu. We don't know what we have in Ben Skoranek. And we have two, you could call them longer vets that have real NFL time, but they've been more of kind of like a high floor, low ceiling type players, like wide receiver threes. So, can someone actually fulfill that wide receiver two spot? We everyone's been assuming it's been Van Jefferson. I've been a little bit more skeptical if he could ever fulfill that role. I hope he does because we've invested a lot into him and he's a nice guy. But this wide receiver core has a lot of issues. Like you were saying, timing is everything in the NFL about your route tree, and that's what makes Cooper Kupp so good. He has perfect route timing, perfect cuts, perfect knowledge of the playbook. That's everything the rookies are going to have to learn. Everything the vets from different systems are going to have to learn, and it's concerning because last year, what was our biggest problem outside of the offensive line? It was the fact that we had no tempo on offense, especially with wide receivers. We could not throw it. We couldn't run it until like the last 5 games when we went up against some of the worst run defenses in the league. So it's like there's a lot going on, and we got to get this ironed out if we want this year to be successful.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're back. Yeah, we're having some technical difficulties. There's a big storm on the East Coast, so what are you gonna do? But jumping back in, so one of the things that really impressed me in the offensive game was the running back, or it was in the wide receiver room. Puka Nacua is really showing his rookie. He's really showing promise for being a rookie. He's been making really good plays. He's been working with Stafford. Stafford's had to correct him on some few things. He's been called pass interference on some of his plays, but that's a learning curve. That's something that you're going to learn as you get into the NFL process. But what I've heard is a lot of good things. Now, there's been a lot of negativity that we've already kind of talked about, but there's been a lot of positivity coming from Puka Nacua. He's battling that wide receiver 3 position with Tutu Atwell. And then you have Marcus Robinson. Marcus Robinson, I think, has been the standout to me coming into this, especially if Van Jefferson is not playing at his 100%. Sean McVay has praised him over and over again. A lot of the other players have praised his abilities, and he is a veteran. I mean, he's been in the league for 7 years, so I think that's right, 7 years. And so, to me, and what I've seen, he's been kind of the one standout, other than kind of what we're accustomed to. We're accustomed to Cooper Kupp being good. We're accustomed to Tutu Atwell performing, even with all the all the Puka Nacua hype that's going on. We kind of expect it, but kind of hearing one of the two people that they brought in that core, both of them have actually done well. But I think Marcus Robinson has really stepped up, and he has solidified a role on this team.
No, I definitely think Demarcus Robinson, you see a guy who's been stuck behind really powerful wide receiver duos most of his career. And being behind someone like Tyreek Hill and Nicole Hardman for such a long time in Kansas City, like he never got a big opportunity to stand out. Now, I'm not gonna lie and say he's gonna light the world on fire this upcoming season, but I definitely think from all the clips I've seen, he looks like he's just having the time of his life. He's learning the offense decently well, and in my opinion, think he's on track to win that wide receiver three position as long as Van Jefferson is healthy. I think he would be wide receiver two if Jefferson got hurt right now. I think Puka has a lot of upside. I know both me and you were kind of intrigued by that pick from the fact that he would be a decent gadget player. We thought he would be the perfect person to kind of give for a jet sweep, kind of feel like some of the niche roles you saw Robert Woods fulfill while he was with the Rams. And if he becomes a fantastic overall wide receiver on top of that, that's great value for where we drafted him. I'm definitely excited to see more. The correction, like you mentioned, is really needed. He's a rookie; he's learning, coming from a smaller esque school. And I definitely think we could potentially have a really nice diamond in the rough situation with Puka. He's jumped Ben Skoranek. I think a part of that has to deal with Ben Skoranek getting a little bit more injuries during a training camp. But you know, Ben Skoranek, I feel like needs to take that next step this year, and we haven't seen it so far. For him to take hold of that wide receiver three, he's battling with both Tutu and Puka, and I think he's losing to both. What do you make of this kind of fall of Ben Skoranek?
I just think like he's too close to what Cooper Cup could, like he could be a step down from a Cooper Cup. He's the same kind of guy. He's a gadget guy. He kind of plays closer to the line. He's not going to be your far out and distance guy, but he's the guy who will go in and block for you. He's the guy who can do short routes. He's the guy who can he could do whatever you want within the backfield. I mean, we saw him in the fullback position. So really, he's that gadget guy. And because Cooper Cup's on the team, it just slides him down deeper in that depth. And we needed him when we needed him, especially last season when he got to, kind of shine a little bit more. They got to do a little bit different things with him. But now that you have Puka, now that Tutu Atwell seems to be more entrenched into the actual wide receiver starting role, hopefully Van Jefferson's healthy. We have Marcus Robinson on here. You have all these players trying to vie for these top 3-4 slots. So I'm still a big fan of Ben Skoranek, but again, like I said, I think it's because he's kind of similar. His abilities are similar to Cooper Cup that you're just never going to find that right spot when you already have Cooper Cup. The only last thing that I have for the training camp, unless you have anything else, is talking about Logan Bruss. Logan Bruss is going to be now going to solely be the backup for Rob Havenstein, kind of what Sean McVay has been alluding to. And that's just because he's more comfortable there. They've tried him at guard, just doesn't seem to be working out super great. When he was in college, I think they said 87% of his spot was in the right in the tackle position, not really in the guard. That was about 13% of the time. So realistically, that's kind of where I see that's where they kind of said that they were going to see him. So it's kind of disappointing that he won't be in the kind of the starting rotation. But again, I think like Sean McVay, he's going to put people in the right positions. He's just not going to just he's not just going to put you somewhere just because he thinks you should be there. He wants the right formula, and I really believe that. So right. So we'll kind of go on to some other things. Like we talked about the methodology. The methodology is just completely different. So what McVay's doing is he's starting their starters. Obviously Donald, Stafford, Cup, they're not going to start during the preseason, but because they're trying to gel these new positions, the offensive line is pretty much going to be new again. it's the defense is all new. They're going to try to find out what's working. And so McVay even said it's going to be very different than what you guys encountered, what you guys are accustomed to. We haven't decided exactly, but we've got to get guys ready to go. And so I think this has to do with a little bit of frustration that things aren't clicking quickly for him. But at the same time, he wants them to be gelled. He wants them to get ready. So he's not going to take the back seat like he's done pretty much ever since 2018 and started to sit as starters. Ashton, how are you feeling about them not starting their starters?
Yeah, Zach, half the team is rookies, so it definitely doesn't surprise me that they want to get some of these guys snaps. You don't want to roll into week one with a lot of these guys never seeing a faster speed than college. I understand it's the preseason. You're not going to necessarily get the best quality out there of competition, but even preseason is better than the USFL or XFL at getting players ready at the somewhat of the speed of the NFL. And I I think he's starting to see that when you have so many rookies, that speed, that intensity of an NFL game isn't necessarily to that standard, and the preseason's gonna kind of mold them by fire, try by fire with a lot of these rookies. I definitely think anyone of 3 years or more shouldn't play. At a certain point, you know what you got with the player, and there's really no point. Like, I really don't think a player gets. Aaron Donald's not going to get very warmed up by the preseason. Um, Van Jefferson is not going to get much out of the preseason, in my opinion. You really need the rookies and the second year players. I guess some of the third year players that haven't seen a lot of playing time, that been on the bench, you need to start giving these guys snaps. They need experience to be ready. And I think we've seen with some of these bench players that don't get snaps, they start a game suddenly and they look terrible. And it's not necessarily because they're a terrible player. It's just they get caught off guard and they're not ready for the situation. And I don't think that's going to completely fix it playing them in the preseason. It won't. I just think it will help further that progression curve a little bit quicker for especially the first and second year players.
Yeah, I think Ernest Jones is going to play. I think since he's going to be the play caller this year, he's going to want to try to get that gelled and got to get accustomed to that spot
Yeah.
pretty quickly. So I'm going to see him play. I plan to see most of the offensive line really play at least a couple series per game. They may not play the whole time, but I think that they're definitely going to get an opportunity to show them what they have, and because that offensive line is going to be the key for the Rams winning this season. So if they can't get gelled and they can't protect Matthew Stafford, this season is just going to go downhill really, really fast. We didn't even talk about the battle between the centers too, about training camp. I mean, between Brian Allen and Coleman Shelton. So that's also an interesting battle that's also taking place. I think either way they go, they're gonna Sean McVay is gonna come out with the best option. I still think Brian Allen has it locked, but there is going to be a battle. We'll see how it shakes out. But the benefit of Coleman Shelton is that he can shift to a guard spot. Brian Allen kind of is just that center spot. So he's going to probably be more depth than being able to kind of adjust to another side. So wanted to throw that in there before we wrapped up our segment on training camp.
Yeah, anything else? Bruss isn't starting at right guard right now. They moved him tackle.
Yep. So we'll keep an eye on that as it progresses. But yeah, he's going to be tackle. And he's probably going to be backing up Rob Havenstein unless something happens. So, which is good, I think. I think the last thing that I really had on our agenda for tonight was talking kind of about OBJ. Basically, there has been some back and forth this past weekend. Sean McVay was on the Pivot podcast and kind of was talking about that situation with OBJ, how they brought him in after the physical. They kind of sat down together and like, OBJ, you have no ACL. And basically his response was, we're just going to ride this thing until the wheels fall off. And surprisingly, he made it to the Super Bowl. Didn't actually finish the Super Bowl, but he was one of the big reasons why we were able to get there and be able to perform until he was injured the way we were performing. And so this past weekend, OBJ put on Twitter, which I thought was really cool. Most players who leave other teams, they don't have to go back and kind of like, prop the other team or the your past team, things like that. But I think this just kind of shows how much players really enjoy working for Sean McVay. Even coming with this John Johnson coming back, I think it's the culture that Sean McVay builds really is something. So OBJ said, "Coach McVay, you changed my life forever, man. Grateful I had the experience with you. Single-handedly changed my life. Love and miss the boys over there. Can't wait to whoop you and Coach Raw this year." So a little bit of poking fun at the end, but again, I think this just brings kind of that mentality of why Coach McVay is so good and why we're so lucky to have him as our coach, and that he decided to stay continued. You got any thoughts about it?
Definitely credit team that when they found out about his knee, they went straight to him, and they didn't like try to sign him, or they didn't try to completely ignore it, uh, and like turn him down. They told him straight up, like, "Hey, you don't have technically a knee right now." And he responded with like, "That's weird because it feels like it's fine." And that's when he said that he'll write it until it ends. And I agree with him. Like, I do think that game is a blowout if he plays in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it would have been a complete blowout. I mean, he was saying that he was going to have 250 yards, thought the game was going to be 42-17. So that's definitely a blowout, and that's the way it was looking. I mean, when you give Stafford all the weapons in the world, you're gonna get that. I mean, they limited him pretty heavily when OBJ left. So so that's definitely a good thing to note. All right, so I think we're gonna wrap things up. Do you have anything else you want to add, Ashton?
I love OBJ. I know a lot of people said he was going to be toxic when he was going to come to the Rams, and he was great for our culture. A great guy, a great football player. It sucks it ended the way it did. I wish the Rams would have paid him last year. I understand why they didn't. I understand why he went to the Ravens. I wish him all the luck, and it's going to be bittersweet when we play the Ravens. I'll probably end up going to that game, and I was at that game in 21 when he caught that game-winning touchdown for the comeback win, when I thought we were going to lose that game for sure. And that's going to be weird to be back there watching him play for them. So,
Well, there's always 2024. We could always bring him back, and he can go on another Super Bowl run with us. So let's fingers crossed that we make that happen. But I think that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode of the East Coast Rams podcast. Big shout out to everyone who started following us on Twitter. We finally reached 500 followers. We're now above that. We're going to be doing a giveaway. Going to do one of our free ECR East Coast Rams t-shirts. So more details will be coming in the coming weeks. Get that done before the beginning of the regular season. We have been posting on Threads. We've been posting on Instagram. Our Instagram followers have also increased significantly. So appreciate everyone who has taken the time to like, subscribe, follow us on all of our various platforms. Whether you're on Apple, you're on Spotify, follow us, subscribe to us on YouTube. We're where you are. If we're not, let us know, and we'll probably pick up that spot too. But if you have questions, you can email us at feedback@eastcoastrams.com. You could DM us. You can message one of us on Twitter. I'm at Zach Mayer. Ashton's on Rams fan Ashton1. But yeah, just please make sure that you do follow us, subscribe, definitely on YouTube, youtube.com/eastcoastrams. That's where our video is. So if you're watching us, that's where you're going to find us. Yeah. Ashton, you got anything else before we wrap it up?
Nah, thank you guys for following. Please like and subscribe. And preseason football this Saturday, Rams football. We'll get to see some snaps from rookies, and gonna be excited. I think I'll be watching it. Zach taking notes, getting ready for a breakdown on next week's pod.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll do another pod when we actually break down kind of our fantasy and how we kind of what we chose and what we didn't choose and why the method we did what we did. We had a really fun time. What was it, last weekend? A week ago when we actually got to pick our picks. Was a really good time. So yeah, we'll be throwing that stuff on social media as well. All right, guys. Well, with that, we will see you all next time.